Good evening, everyone, and welcome. At this time, we do not have a quorum, so we are going to adjourn until we have a quorum. We need 3 members present, so we will be back on the air as soon as we can. Thank you. County Tentative Budget and Millage Rates Public Hearing Meeting. It is being held at the Joe N. Idolet Junior Teacher Education Center. Today is Monday, July 24th. The time is 5:15 p.m., and this meeting will now come to order. The chair asks that out of respect to everyone, please silence all electronic devices. And if you wish to share anything with board members during citizen input, please give to our executive assistant, Mrs. Morey. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, board members, we will have adoption of the orders of the day. I need a call for a motion to adopt the orders of the day.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Motion
Second.
by Ms. Berenborg and seconded by Dr. Posca. Any discussion? Okay, the vote, call for a motion to adopt the orders of the day. All in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. The vote carries 4-0. Just a short message before Dr. Moore and Mr. Fagan take over. Seeing that there are no consent or action items, there's no citizen input. There will be an opportunity for citizens to speak during the public hearing portion of the millage and proposed budget. All right, now, Dr. Moore, purpose of the public hearing, the floor is yours, and then Mr. Fagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The purpose of tonight's meeting is for the board to adopt tentative millage rates and a tentative budget for the 23-24 fiscal year after receiving public input. Trim, truth in millage advertisements have been published according to the specifications of law. Trim requirements that the first issue we discussed at the public hearing. Advertisements have been published in accordance with the specifications of law. Truth in millage. The first issue we discussed at the public hearing is concerning the proposed millage rates for the fiscal year. By law, the budget is required to be adopted after the adoption of millage and after the public input on the budget. Chairman Jones, being that there are no consent or action items, as you just said, to be approved, I will review the proposed 23-24 tentative millage and tentative budget, followed by input from the public. Then the board will adopt the appropriate motions with roll call votes. In order to have that presentation, I'll ask Mr. Fagan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moore, through the chair. Thank you for the opportunity. Tonight we're going to discuss the 23-24 tentative millage rates and tentative budget. But before I get started, I must honor and acknowledge my staff. They're standing behind me, six of my 9. They are the best of the best with 100% dedication that got us where we are today and will get us through September. To give you some highlights, Mrs. Kim Coltman, she started in 1988 out of high school, so she's been with me 36 years. Kim, raise your hand. The next senior, not citizen, but senior with us is Ms. Kathy Heaton, Accounts Payable Supervisor. She's been with us 36 years. Both of each other knew each other at Vero Beach High School. We won't talk about all the fun they had not going to school back then. I also have Mr. Jim Higgins. He's been with us 3 years, 16 years experience. I have Mr. Stephanie Letts, Senior Accountant, been with us 4 years, 9 years experience. Deb Heller, Sergeant Heller, was in the military for 20 years? 21 years. She runs a tight ship back there. She's been with us 10 years, 16 years experience. And we can't forget Miss Lynn Justin. She's been here almost as long as the other two since 1998, 26 years and 32 years experience. Did I miss anybody? No. Stephanie. Yes, Stephanie. Stephanie's our senior accountant. Been here for over 9 years. Okay, tonight there's 3 parts to tonight's meeting. 1, we're going to discuss and adopt the tentative millage rates. We're going to discuss and adopt the tentative budget, and then we're going to set a date for the final budget hearing. This hearing is the first of 2 public hearings required under Florida statute to provide the public an opportunity to give an input to the proposed millage rates and proposed budget for 2023-2024. On July 19th, the second FEFP calculation and the millage certification was received from the Florida Department of Education. Upon receipt of this information, the trim advertisements that we discussed on the 17th were updated and published, and the board also received supplemental information regarding that. This public hearing was advertised at the TC Palm, also known as the Indian Press Journal, on Friday, July 21st, 2023, in the form of Truth and Millage, TRIM. This was approved by the board on July 17th, 2023. The second meeting for the final millage will be held on Thursday, September the 7th, 2023, at 5:01 p.m. at the J.A. Thompson Administrative Center. That notice for that public hearing will be through direct mailing from the property appraiser's office in the form of a trim notice. The proposed millage rates for the 2023-2024 school year is 5.9110 mils. This is a decrease of 0.0740 mils, or 1.24%, from the 2022-23 millage rates of 5.9850. The total millage rates to be levied exceeds the rollback rate by 13.41%. This means that the average taxpayer in Indian River could pay an additional 13% in school taxes, but this does not include also county taxes. This is only school taxes. This calculation is based on the total millage levied in the new year compared to the rollback rate. So this compares state and local rates. The rollback rate, if you remember, is the millage rate necessary on the new tax roll that will generate identical dollars from the prior year. The increase in taxes is because of a decrease in required local effort set by the Department of Education, State of Florida, but is offset by a significant increase in property values compared to the prior year. Property values increased $4.5 billion, or 17% last year. The prior year, they increased $3.9 billion, 17%, and in 2021, from the prior year, they only increased $1 billion, or only 5.3%, so a steady increase in property values. The district is levying the required allowable millage for the district to participate and receive federal funding from the state. If we do not levy these levels, the district will be subject to loss of $43 million in state funding. Tonight, there is two resolutions for the board to approve. Resolution 2024-02, which is your tentative millage rates, and Resolution 2024-03, tentative budget. These approvals are required for the district to be in compliance with Florida Department of Revenue trim requirements, and of course, trim stands for truth and millage. The proposed millage rates to be voted on tonight and the approved revenue to be generated by these are as follows. Required local effort, including a prior period funding adjustment millage, 3.160 for $92,006,730. Basic discretionary operating, 0.7480. Amount to be raised, $21,758,152. Capital outlay, 1.5 mils. Amount to be raised, $43,632,658. Additional voter discretion, 0.50 mils. Amount to be raised, $14,544,220. Total mills, 5.9110. Amount to be raised, $171,941,760. Total millage rate levied exceeds the rollback rate by 13.41%. You may ask, Ron, what does that mean to the average homeowner? It all depends on that homeowner's particulars about their home, but let's assume you have a $250,000 home, that increased 6%, and you were also homestead exemption, and therefore you were part of the Save Your Home cap. So your average taxes would go up about $30. But again, only for school taxes, does not account for anything from the county. The above millage rates are allowable rates as approved by the Department of Education, and anything above that would require a voter referendum. The amount to be raised here is based on $172 million, which is also 90% of the tax roll. School districts are not allowed to levy and budget more than 96% because of not everybody pays their taxes on time. Comparison to prior year, this year we're levying $172 million, last year was $148 million, so we have $24 million more in levy, or approximately 16% more. This year also we're required to levy a prior period funding millage adjustment of 0.006. Basically what this is, anytime a school levies in a prior year and you don't collect all your required local effort, they ask you to assess an additional prior period adjustment. That will generate probably $168,000 of additional revenue. Second part of this hearing deals with the adoption of the tentative budget. The board is requested to adopt the 23-24 tentative budget and certify the adoption by resolution. The tentative budget is as follows. General operating budget, $207,357,479. Debt service budget, $31,681,614. Capital outlay budget, $66,366,989. Special revenue budget, $34,207,424. Internal service budget, $34,310,074. Enterprise fund, $3,070,763. Total tentative budget, $376,994,342. And you may say, Ron, why do you read all these numbers every year? It's required by statute. They have to be read into the record. Next steps. Based on your actions tonight, you will approve the 23-24 tentative millage rates and the tentative budget. You will accept the 23 certification of school taxable values, which is called the DR 420. We will certify that, send it over to the property appraiser's office. They will execute their trim documents and mail all those documents out. The district will also schedule a final hearing for the 23-24 budget on Thursday, September the 7th, 2023, at a special board meeting at 5:01 p.m. at the J.A. Thompson Administrative Center. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Fagan, your team, and Dr. Moore. Okay, the first part, opening this up to the board members for any discussion before we go into the public hearing. Board members, anyone like to make a comment or question?
Sure.
Berenborg?
Thank you for all of your hard work. I know it takes a team and a very dedicated team, and they are. The millage rates are set by the state. The state requires us to levy the taxes for required local effort.
To the chair, yes, ma'am.
So there's not much that we can change on this, correct?
Absolutely. Nothing we can change if we don't, unless we want to forego $43 million of state revenue.
No. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Berenborg. Mr. Barefoot or Dr. Pasca?
Nothing for me.
Thank you. This time we will move on to the public hearing for the millage rates. This item deals with the 2023-24 proposed millage rates. Dr. Moore, have you documented that the public hearing was properly advertised in accordance with state statute?
Yes.
We now recess this meeting to conduct the public hearing as advertised. The public hearing is now in session. Dr. Moore, are there any written responses to the advertised public hearing to be read at this time?
Ms. Maddox, any? No, not at this time.
Okay. All right. Public is invited to address this issue at the time. Any individual or any group? Okay. The chair concludes that the announced public hearing on July 24th, 2023 has been conducted pursuant to notice and that ample opportunity to address this issue has been provided to all. The board meeting is reconvened at this time. Approval of the resolution 2024-02, adoption of the 2023-24 tentative millage rates. Approval of this resolution 2024-02 for the adoption of the tentative millage rates as advertised for 5.9110 mills, representing required local effort, basic discretionary, additional voted millage, and capital outlay. Ms. Morey, please take a roll call at this time for approval.
Dr. Pasca?
Present.
Yes.
Mrs. Rosario? Mr. Barefoot?
Present.
Are we supposed to say present?
Dr. Jones?
Present and I.
Mrs. Berenborg?
Yay.
Should we do that again?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes.
You
I
need
would
to
recommend doing
approve it
that
or not.
again. This is
Yeah.
for the vote, everybody.
This for
Yes.
the vote.
Okay.
Dr. Pasca?
Yay.
Mrs. Rosario?
Yay.
Mr. Barefoot?
Yay.
Dr. Jones?
Yay.
Mrs. Berenborg?
Yay.
Thank you.
Okay, this resolution passes with a 5-0 vote. Thank you very much. All right, the next item is discussion of the 23-24 proposed budget. At this time, board members, the floor is open for discussion. Any board member like to make a comment or input? Okay.
Sure.
Go ahead, Ms. Berenborg.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you for your thorough response to all the questions that everybody had. Thank you for meeting with me individually. Thank you for today, for kind of giving us every answer that we could come up with a question, so appreciate that. Two things that I wanted to bring up publicly. One is something that we discussed a couple years ago, and I appreciate you adding to the budget, and then we discussed it again, and you said hopefully we can increase it, and that is the $150,000 for fine arts. And that is split between all the schools, correct?
Middle and high.
Through the chair, yes, ma'am.
All schools or just middle and high?
Secondaries, just secondaries.
Okay, so elementary schools, where would they buy their equipment for?
Through the
music?
chair, it would be through the discretionary funding.
Right. So we may want to look at that in the future as well. You know, I know we have a lot of music openings right now for elementary schools, and maybe that's some sort of incentive, as somebody that, you know, has a interesting budget. It'd be interesting to see why we're losing music teachers, and is that something that could help? I don't know. The other thing is, something I brought up this afternoon, and we talked about this, is going out for TAN. We talked about FEFP, possibly your suggestion I liked, which was looking at asking the state if FEFP could be divided into 50% in the first 3 months and then spread out the rest of the school year. That would help that team right there, not scramble to try to find money to pay people's salaries, and it would also help us so that we don't have to vote on a TAN. It would also help our taxpayers, so we're not out all that additional money, because we surely could do a lot more with the money that we're just using for interest rates that we're paying for a loan. And I mentioned today that, you know, reaching out to some other school districts, and I'll bring this up again tonight, but Collier, Monroe, Martin, Walton, Gulf, and Franklin are the other school districts that are in this same situation as us. That's correct, right?
To the chair, yes, ma'am. And the impact to the state would be minimum if you limited it to those few districts that, one, are not a net borrower, or not a net investor, but a net borrower, and are in the same category as us, as pretty much burning down all your cash through the year, and then at the end of the year, you're pretty much at the basic level. You
Okay,
can limit
and
that
then-
impact to them.
And then the advanced funding statute, you were going to find that for me?
I'm researching it now.
Okay,
I'll find
all right. And that way we can look at seeing if we could make that part of our plan to address when we go further with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Berenborg. Any other board member, any comments or questions? Just want to thank you again, Mr. Fagan, again, for all the individual questions that you will answer, so that when we make this decision, we're doing it in the best interest of students. Okay. All right, public input hearing on proposed 23-24 budget. Dr. Moore, have you documented that the public hearing was properly advertised in accordance with state statute?
Yes, ma'am.
We now recess this meeting to conduct the public hearing as advertised. The public hearing is now in session. Dr. Moore, are there any written responses to the advertised public hearing to be read at this time?
No, they're not.
No other responses, okay. The chair concludes that the announced public hearing on July 24th, 2023 has been conducted pursuant to notice, and that ample opportunity to address this issue has been provided to all. The board meeting is reconvened at this time for approval of Resolution 2024-03 for the adoption of the 23-24 tentative budget. Approval of the resolution for adoption of tentative budget as advertised and presented at this hearing, and to establish a final public hearing date on September 7th, 2023 at 5:01 p.m. Mrs. Morey, please take a roll call vote at this time.
Dr. Pasca,
Yay.
Mrs. Rosario,
Yay.
Mr. Barefoot,
Yay.
Dr. Jones,
Yay.
Mrs. Berenborg.
Yay.
Thank you.
Okay, the resolution passes with a 5-0 vote. Thank you very much, board members. All right, the next steps in adoption of budget and millage levy. Dr. Moore, I'm just going to recognize you at this time to speak, and Mr. Fagan.
I'll defer Mr. Fagan.
All right, thank you.
Chair of the board, we pretty much have covered all the discussions on the levies.
All right, thank you. All right, at this time, closing, any other comments for board members? Okay, the chairman adjourns this meeting at 5:34. We will start the regular school board meeting at 6 p.m. Thank you.